Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the We the People of Eastern Kentucky podcast. As you probably noticed, my esteemed host and colleague, Mr. Terry B. Sire, is not with us here today. Unfortunately, Terry had a family member pass away. We want to send out our thoughts and prayers and good feelings and good wishes to his family in this time. We're very sorry to hear that. As always, we also want to go ahead and send a shout out to all of our sponsors for this podcast. We the People of Eastern Kentucky is brought to you by Appalachian Insider and BML Business Alliance. Our sponsors include Granny Made Cheesecakes, Appalachia TCG Tabletop Gaming, Jessica D. Williams Photography, and many more. Today we're going to be hosting a couple of wonderful ladies who we have actually hosted here on the We the People of Eastern Kentucky podcast once before. Unfortunately, due to technical issues, kind of like we're having today, we were not able to release the video footage of the conversation. So once again, we're very happy to invite the ladies of CASA back on with us. Ladies, if you wouldn't mind having a seat, introducing yourselves.
My name is Lafarrah Little, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for Floyd, Pike, and McGoffin counties.
And I am Kristyn Densmore-Smith, and I am the executive director of CASA of Appalachian Mountains.
So go ahead and whichever one of you wants to take it, it's open. Give us a little sort of a summary of what CASA is.
Yeah, so CASA is an acronym for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And what we do is we're a nonprofit that works with children that are going through the court system due to some form of abuse or neglect. And what we do primarily is we train community individuals to help advocate for these children. And with the help of our coordinators, they help case manage and support these individuals. And the whole idea is that we can hopefully find permanent, safe, and loving homes for these children.
So is CASA a government organization or a nonprofit?
It is a nonprofit, and we are a national organization. We also have a state program and then our local programs, which is what we are considered a local program. Our national organization is National CASA, and then we have the Kentucky CASA Network, which governs the state of Kentucky, and then the local programs. There's a variety, and we just happen to be one of them.
Okay. So give me just a little bit of history about where CASA started. Where did it come from? How did it get going?
Awesome. So CASA started in 1976 with Judge Sokup. He is out of Washington State. And he started the program with the idea in mind that he was making a lot of life-changing decisions and felt like he didn't have enough information or wasn't informed enough to make those decisions. Because anytime, a child goes through foster care or is removed from a home, they experience some form of trauma. And a lot of times they're not always returned home. And at this time, the judge felt like he really just wasn't being provided enough information to make a good decision. And so he created CASA, and it started off with just some everyday individuals with, kind of lack of bias. They weren't getting paid to do this. They were volunteering their time, and they just wanted to support these children that are going through the system. Since 1976, CASA has expanded to every state, except for, I do believe, North Dakota, if I'm not mistaken, and then also District of Columbia. And then as for our own personal history, CASA of the Appalachian Mountains is very new to this area. I'm sure your viewers will be like, I've never heard of this. Well, we're very new. We officially started in 2021. Judge Goring out of Perry County was the first judge to appoint our governing board. Since then, they hired me in 2022, and then we hired our two coordinators. The other one's not here this evening. That same December, and then we've been active ever since then.
Okay, all right. So, give me kind of a rundown of what it is that a coordinator does, because as I understand it, CASA has coordinators which are volunteers, and they're from the local community. So, is there ever conflicts of interest? What does a coordinator do? Anything like that?
So my main job is to kind of walk the volunteers through these cases, because like we said, a lot of the people that are volunteering have never done this type of work. So it's a lot of introducing them to who they will need to speak with, making sure that their cases are properly taken care of, and then if they have any questions or needs, that I'm there also to help them through that. But I think the major part of my job is just making sure that our volunteers feel informed enough and are confident enough to go out and actually help these kids. And I just coordinate them.
Okay, so what are some of the resources that the volunteers have? So basically, how do they help these kids find homes?
So my volunteers currently, they are appointed by the judge in whichever county they're at, and then they get to go out and meet with the foster parents. They meet the children, they meet the biological family, anybody that has been important to those children. And I help them draft up a court report that has all the information of what the child's wants were, what the child's needs were, because that was a lot of what was kind of being overlooked, I guess, or just not being able to be reached at enough. And a lot of times what we found is that these kids aren't getting everything they need. They still feel lonely. They're still sad. They need people to talk to. And a volunteer for CASA is almost like a person that goes in and they're like, hey, I got you. I'm here. You're okay.
Okay, so it's been my experience, from my understanding, that a lot of times with the cabinet, for example, the cabinet is always an advocate for the child, but a lot of times is even more so an advocate for the reconnection of the whole family. So is CASA more specifically for the child?
Yes, we focus on what is going to be in the child's best interest, what the child is currently needing, and we focus on them because they are our main goal. It is our goal to make sure that they're comfortable, that they're happy, and they're having their needs met wherever they're placed. But it is also a go for us to make sure that reunification can be possible if safely done.
Okay. What kind of challenges do you think CASA normally faces? What do their volunteers face, especially specifically here in the Appalachia region?
I think the main challenges are honestly probably just the region itself. A lot of our volunteers are honestly not from this area.
Yeah.
A lot of our volunteers happen to be out of state that just happened to move to Kentucky, to Eastern Kentucky. So it's kind of a little bit of a learning curve because we're a very unique group of people, in my opinion. And so I think that's a really big challenge for our volunteers. The other thing is just getting comfortable with the idea of meeting these families, meeting these children, and kind of reining in, those feelings that we as normal people would have when we witness someone that has abused a child. I think that's always a challenge for anybody, not just our volunteers. But I think it's really important as to what we tell our volunteers is at the end of the day, we're here to support that child and be an extra resource for them.
You bring up an interesting point, so I'd like to push a little bit onto that more. In Appalachia, it occurs to me that in Appalachia, a lot of times you'll see, especially in small communities like in this area, a lot of issues that arise within a family are often, let's see, what's the best way to put this? They're often kept within the family. They're often controlled by the family. Their outsiders don't generally know about that. So you mentioned that a lot of your volunteers are from outside. Mm-hmm. Is it your perspective that people that come from larger cities or outside places tend to rely more on the safety net because of less of a family tie like we have here in Appalachia? As you know, a lot of these small hollers will have 3, 4, 5 generations growing up right there in the same area.
Yeah.
Where outside of Appalachia, a lot of times you'll have mother raises child moves away 2 states over, then they get to know the community and build up community ties, so that sort of thing.
I think it's definitely, when we have volunteers that are out of state, we always do explain the kind of mentality and how we're raised. Like you said, Eastern Kentucky, usually if you're born here, you're going to be raised here and your family's been raised here your whole life, and we're close-knit people. And so when we, start training our volunteers, we always express, this might not be what you're used to, but this is just the way we are. And so I think it's very much a little bit of a learning curve for them. I'm not going to say that they necessarily kind of, lean on that as a crutch a little bit, but I think it's definitely something that they have to learn, and we do talk about during our training sessions because our volunteers do go through a training process. They're not just thrown to the wolves and hope for the best, but we do talk about the specific needs of Eastern Kentucky and what it means to be an Appalachian. And so I think that we handle it pretty well. And again, all of our volunteers, they do amazing work, and even though they might not be from this area specifically, they care about the children in this area. They care about the people that they serve. And they make adjustments, and I think they do a wonderful job.
And while home visits can be a fear for new volunteers, we always have a staff member go on the first couple visits with them to kind of just gauge how the family is going to react to them, how they interact with the child, and just to make sure that the situation is safe. Because making sure our volunteers are safe and they are really enjoying the work that they're doing is a top priority.
In this area, to kind of tie back into that, have you noticed one of the things you'll hear a lot of the old-time Southern women say is we don't air our dirty laundry.
Yeah.
So that goes back to kind of my question about, once this problem, whatever it may be, is known in the family, do the volunteers have trouble sometimes getting information out of the family?
We have had trouble getting information from families, but what I've experienced personally, because I've worked cases also, is once you show up genuine, you show up as yourself, you tell them you're there to volunteer, and your only desire is to make sure that they can do better. What I've noticed is they open their homes a little bit to you.
Really? Okay.
I have a case right now where I wouldn't mind going to birthday parties or cookouts or anything to that effect, because we have gotten that close and I do know what the kids' needs are. And a lot of our volunteers have realized that once they get their foot in the door, as long as they're genuine, the families don't have problems with them.
And I kind of play off your other statement as well. Is the key thing is informing them that you are a volunteer. Because a lot of times, when you tell them that, the response is, "Oh, you're not getting paid to do this. You don't got a hand in the pot." No, I don't. I'm just here because I care and I want to be present and help you guys and help your children. And a lot of times, again, like Lafarrah said, that kind of opens the doorway to get information that we need, and they're very responsive to it.
So you mentioned birthday parties. Is it safe to say, and this is directed to both of you, is it safe to say that you end up developing an emotional connection with these children that you help?
Yeah, you do.
You honestly care a lot about these children that you serve, and I mean, again, like Lafarrah said, you go to birthday parties, you get invited to graduations, and these kids care for you and you care for them.
Because you meet these families at some of their lowest points, and to be there walking side by side with them, to see them make those changes and get those rewards for making those changes, you can't help but get attached.
How long does a CASA volunteer usually work with a child?
So normally cases don't last more than a year. We do ask that you do make the commitment to stay on at least a year. However, I have a case that's been going on 5 years. It's just criminal cases play a part, and people living in different states trying to reach out to families who may not have had contact before, just to let them know, hey, there is this child, they may need a home. It takes a lot of strings being pulled to make sure that everything falls into place properly.
And then what would be the average age range of? Is it just across the spectrum?
Yep. We have cases that the children are 3 months old, and we have cases where they're 15, 16, 17.
Okay.
And then as for the volunteers themselves, they have to at least be 21. A lot of our volunteers right now are kind of in that mid range of between 30 and 40.
Yep.
Some of our volunteers, again, if you want to even go past age, look at workforce, some are working, some are stay-at-home parents. We've got a wide variety of individuals that are volunteering their time, age, and, demographic.
If you don't mind, ladies, go into a little more information about the volunteers. Go a little more information about the volunteer process, what's required.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things. When someone is interested in volunteering, we ask that they fill out an application, and they can find an application on our website, which is just www.casaofappalachianmountains.org. It'll pop right up, and then there'll be different, tabs that you can click to get to our application, and it's online. You can also email us, and our email's on our Facebook page. But once that application comes in, the coordinator for your specific area will reach out to you and schedule an interview. If you happen to be in Magoffin County, Lafarrah will be the coordinator to reach out to you. And then if you happen to be in Perry, Leslie, Letcher, Knott, all those areas, Kayla will reach out to you. And we'll do an interview, we'll do background checks, we do reference checks. And then once we get all that approval done, we'll move forward with our training process. It is 30 hours of training, which sounds really daunting, but it moves pretty quickly. And it really helps if there's a large class, because then there's a lot more kind of feedback and conversation, which is what you want. You want to bounce ideas off of each other. You want to ask questions. And then after that pre-service training, which again, I typically would say it lasts about a month, you will do a swearing-in ceremony with the judge of the county that you want to volunteer in. And again, we've got individuals that came to a Floyd County training, but they're serving in Pike County. Same with Perry. We've got Perry volunteers that are serving in Knott County. So it doesn't matter where you get trained. wherever you live or reside, that's where you'll be serving. And so after you get sworn in, Lafarrah will work with the court and we'll get you a case assignment. And then we'll start you from there, and you'll work that case.
Okay, so tell me, how long have you actually officially set up here in the McGoffin County area?
I think we just started this year.
Mm-hmm.
We currently don't have any volunteers here yet, but we're hoping with the podcast and just getting our name out there, people will begin to know that, there is a program that can help these children and there really is a need. And that's the big thing we were hoping to accomplish with doing podcasts and just coming out to the events and stuff, is that maybe we'll gain some volunteers who have the same desire to help little ones that we do.
And kind of going off the need aspect, people are always like, okay, well, what is the need, right? We serve 7 counties. We serve McGoffin, Floyd, Pike, Perry, Leslie, Letcher, and Knott County. Of those 7 counties in 2023, there was over 790 cases of substantiated child abuse in some form or fashion. And of those 795 cases, we only have 5 to 6 volunteers actively working these cases. So the need is great. We need individuals. We want people that are dedicated and passionate about serving not only their community, but the children in that community. Mm-hmm. I'm a strong believer that our children are our future, and to have a CASA volunteer is to give them that extra support. Because there's been studies, proven, if you have a CASA volunteer and you went through these, went through the court system, you're more likely to succeed in school. You're less likely to be placed back into placement because permanency has been found. Your foster home improvement rate is exponential. There's a lot of benefits to a child having a CASA volunteer. And so on the need aspect, there is a need, and our goal is to have all 700 of those kids have somebody.
And I've seen it. I've seen those statistics actually firsthand. I've had cases where the kids were failing. They were getting in fights a lot. They were just having a hard go. Mm-hmm. And then they get a CASA worker, and I've seen their grades improve. I've seen their behavior improve. I've seen that light kind of come back in their eyes, because at that point they realize, okay, I have somebody that's backing me. They don't care what everybody else wants or what everything is going on. They want me safe, happy. And that really can change a child's entire outlook on what they are currently going through, because it's a lonely process.
It absolutely is. My experience is, from what I understand, the cabinet is in sort of the same situation. There are so many cases in need of workers. So would you say that you ladies work with the cabinet as sort of a team effort?
Yes, because helping them ensures that the children are helped.
Right.
So if they call, like if I have a DCDS worker call and say, hey, is there any way you can get these records? I'm running late, I'm having a hard go. I don't mind to make those phone calls and send everybody those records that are in the case that may need that information. So it's a lot of information sharing, but we don't want to ever step on anybody's toes. We don't want them to feel like we're someone to compete with, because our main goal is to be their teammate, because the kids are what matters at that point.
Right. You mentioned seeing that light come on, and I think it's important. One of the notes that I have down here is basically, it says why is hope essential for CASA mission, but I actually want to get a little bit deeper than that. You mentioned being an advocate for the child, and that you've seen how that can just spur a better overall life for the child. If you don't care, go a little more into depth with that.
So a lot of times these kids are taken from the only place and the only people they have ever known. They don't really have that backing, or they feel like they don't have that backing. So having someone that shows up for every visit, that shows up for every court date, that is making the effort to show you, hey, I am here for you, it gives that child a little more sense of peace. They have the understanding that they have someone in their corner and that they will have a voice. Because a lot of times we don't think to ask children, well, how is it going here? Or how do you feel? And that's our main purpose. We want to know how they're feeling. We want to know how they're doing in every aspect.
A famous podcaster said just a while back, and the quote really stuck with me, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So by that extension, the worst thing that's ever happened to you could be a car wreck, or the worst thing that's ever happened to someone else is just something atrocious.
Mhm.
But they both got through it. But interestingly enough, the reverse of that is true too. The best thing that's ever happened to you is the best thing that's ever happened to you. So you look at a lot of times these children. This is my perspective.
Right.
These children that are coming out of awful situations, and you look at it from an outside perspective and think, how could that child cry when you take them away from that situation? How could that hurt them? But this is the only situation they've ever known. So
They
to
don't know
them,
it's
that's as
different.
good as it's ever been.
Mhm. And it's like, it's one of those things, it's hard for us as adults. I always make this comment. It's hard for us as adults to rationalize that situation. Why are you crying? This person has harmed you or hurt you. But like Lafarrah pointed out, and like you've pointed out, that's all they've ever known. It's
Right.
normal to them. And to go from that environment into a new environment where they don't know anything that's going to happen, they don't always get things explained to them in the best possible way for their age range. They go into these homes that might have 30 other children, or again, individuals that they're not familiar with. It's scary. It's traumatizing.
And often will already have their guard up because
Exactly.
they're used to being in bad situations.
Exactly. So it's hard for us as adults to kind of rationalize what they're feeling, but again, this is all they've ever known. And so when they get into these homes and they eventually kind of have a CASA appointed, Lafarrah's kind of pointed out, it's about showing up.
Mhm.
Showing up for them is, to me, the first step to build any of those relationships. I think about our teenagers are kind of the harder group because they've been around a longer
Right.
time, and they've already built these walls so high.
Probably seen much more than they should.
Yes.
Exactly. And a lot of times they wind up being parentified, and they've raised their siblings and so forth and so forth. So when that CASA volunteer starts saying, hey, I'm going to be there, and then they're there,
Mhm.
or hey, I'm going to do this for you, and it gets done, it starts tearing down those walls, and it gives them an opportunity to grow, to have that hope that you've
Yes.
indicated to, or what our mission is, which is to change a child's story. Like, that's just the first small step. And it might seem small just showing up for somebody, but think about the times when you as an adult wish you had someone to show up for you. That's what we're doing for these kids. We're showing up, we're being present, and that in itself can change their entire life.
Because the moment they start realizing that you're showing up, that
Mhm.
you're going to be a consistent, that's when they start to open up. And they have the chance to tell somebody that's not going to judge them how they're really feeling about the situation. Because a lot of times they don't want to admit to their foster moms, I miss my mommy.
Mhm.
I want to go back to mommy. Even though mommy's struggling, like it's just really hard to see a kid that feels so hopeless have nobody there to kind of back them.
Right.
And as long as we keep showing up, we're building that trust and we're building that child up.
In my experience, just in my previous lines of work, you can almost see, and tell me if you feel like this is true for both of you as well, you can almost see the moment when the child lets their shoulders relax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
It's a whole
when they start,
body.
yeah, it's like, okay, everything's going to be all right.
Mhm.
Can either, and I'm gonna put you both on the spot. Can either of you think of a time where you've been like, it's just a noticeable, oh wow, that's changed.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah.
So with younger age groups, this is going to sound crazy, but the moment I knew that I'd finally got in with this child,
Mhm.
she had ran down the hallway into my office, jumped on my lap, and shoved a soggy Cheeto in my nose.
Nailed it.
And I was like, you're comfortable enough to share your soggy Cheeto. And
Thank
then
you. Yeah.
after that,
Thank
we
you.
got to play. Yeah,
Mm.
it was great. But we got to playing, and she was telling me things that she hadn't told me before. And then with my teenagers, honestly, I think the day I realized that I was honest to God making a difference is I was leaving the child, and I was like, you're a cool kid. I like you. And she goes, I love you. And then she turned and ran to her car, and I was in tears.
Yeah. How are you gonna walk away after?
Yeah,
You're just
like-
gonna drop this bomb
Yeah,
and
I
then
was
leave?
just like, oh my God, I told you I liked you, and you're like, I love you, and you're running away. Like, but that was the moment that I knew that, you know what, even if I don't feel like I'm making all the difference in the world, I made a world of difference to that one child.
Mhm.
And
it was worth it.
that's something, from looking at it from the perspective of, I'm not a volunteer, so as from the perspective of somebody who would want to become a volunteer, that's something that anybody who cares would be hesitant about. Like, Will I be able to invest this time? Will I be good enough?
Yeah.
Will I be, and you gotta, and this is just me spitballing, you gotta get past that. It's just the fact that you're trying and they can see that.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I agree. Like, again, just showing up, just putting a good faith effort. And, the bright side to our volunteers is you get one case. You're not bombarded with 30 plus cases at a time. It's one case at a time. And you're only required to meet with them once a month. Now, a lot of our volunteers do more than once a month, and we encourage that, but that's the one requirement. Right. And, kind of playing off mine, my moment when I knew I was making a difference was I've always had a lot of teenager cases. And it was every time I kept showing, I was like, if you ever need anything, just call me. I'm right there. You just call me, text me, this is my number, do whatever you need to do. And every time they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. The one time that they needed me, they immediately called. They're like, hey, I'm in trouble. This is what's going on. Can you please help me? And it was one of those moments like, okay, she's obviously listening because she knew that she could trust me enough to call me and knew that I would show up. And, we got the situation handled, but it was that moment where I was like, okay, I'm doing something right because she knew to call. She knew I was going to be there to help her. And again, that's just part of it, is just being present. And you're right, you just got to get past that fear, because these kids that you work with, oh my God, I can't even talk about it enough. It's not just because I do this job. I love my job. These kids deserve everything. And if we can just provide one person for that child, it could just make a world of a difference.
And the wonderful thing about CASAs are, once your case is over, if you've built that relationship with the family and you've built that relationship with the child, you don't have to leave them. Mm-hmm. You know how therapists, once their client leaves, they can't talk. Mm-hmm. That's not how this works. So if you build that relationship and you feel like it's a strong one, it's one that you can continue.
Okay, so actually I was going to ask about that. There are no regulations as far as, okay, we finished with our assigned amount of time, now I have to let you go, in none of that kind of situation?
As for like being their CASA representative, after permanency is found, then the case is done and their role as a CASA volunteer is done. However, I'll use myself as an example because I used to volunteer. I got off my case, we were done. However, me and that teenager still kept a relationship. We still texted each other. We still kept in contact. She wound up going to beauty school and is a hairdresser now. Like, those things are allowed, but it's not going to be in your CASA role anymore. Right. And again, it's up to that child and that child's guardians at that time, how that relationship progresses.
Okay. And another question along those lines. We consider, my wife and I were considered foster care. Mm-hmm. And when considered foster care, one of our biggest things was, how am I going to love this child and then let it go?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then you ask about that. So have either of you run across a situation where a volunteer gets so involved with a child that would become a possibility, like a permanency situation or anything like that? Is that anything like that ever, or is that discouraged?
I haven't so far.
Yeah, I haven't either. Which our volunteers aren't allowed to be foster parents because it could be a conflict.
Right.
And same with cabinet workers. It could potentially be a conflict, but I've never encountered that. But again, where we're new, can't ever say never. Yeah. But as of right now, in this moment, no, we have not.
The reason I ask is because that's basic human emotion dictates, especially if you're volunteering to help children, that you care about these children.
Yes.
So you're going to develop a strong emotional connection to them.
You do.
I don't see myself walking away from the kids that are on my case. I want to be there for graduations. I want to be there rooting them on because I've seen where they used to be. And it is so beyond just amazing to watch them grow and become tiny adults themselves.
10 years later, call me when your first child's born.
Yeah. It's like, then we'll talk about it. But yeah, it's just so nice to watch how you can change somebody's life with just being you.
It always amazes me, and especially with what you ladies do with the cabinet. It amazes me sometimes at how, and I'm not by any means trying to say what you do is simple by any stretch, but sometimes it does amaze me how the simplest act of, I'm just going to be kind to you, can just change you completely.
Because you never know, like, even with outside of CASA, you never know what somebody's going through. We were actually talking about that on the way here. There could be someone having the absolute worst day of their life, and something as simple as a smile and, hey, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
Can bring people off that edge. And it's like that with our kids. They feel so hopeless. They feel like the world's given up on them sometimes. And having that one person just look at you and be like, girl, you've got this, or you can keep going, it really can change their entire outlook.
Yeah. It's a lot of times you would call it platitudes, but there's a reason that platitudes have been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need somebody to say, you've got this, you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
And it does work.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little more about, if you don't mind, let's talk a little more about volunteers. Mm-hmm. You said you have them, they have to be at least 21,
yes,
correct? And then you have a variety of ages. Have you noticed that more of this age range volunteers, or more of this age range, or socioeconomic status, or anything like that?
I will honestly say our socioeconomic status is kind of variety. We've got, some that are on higher income, middle class. It varies on that side. The main thing that we've noticed is this is very female dominated.
Very.
And so we're always pushing for more male advocates. It's hard for us as females to relate to a little boy or a teenage boy and what they're going through, because I've never experienced that.
Right.
Just like, it would be hard for a male to kind of relate to a, teenager or a little girl, because they've never experienced that either. So we're always pushing for more male volunteers, because that's kind of where our discrepancy really is.
Yes.
But as for age and social economics, it really does vary. Again, we've got younger, we've got older. It seems to be the most predominant set of volunteers in our group right now is mostly stay-at-home moms. That their kids are a little bit older, they've got a little bit more free time on their hands. But again, we have working women as well. Again, our organization is all women right now.
I currently have a volunteer who works full-time. She has children. She volunteers her time for special needs at our local Floyd County Library. So it's not so much about
those
time.
are the people that make me feel like I'm not doing that.
I get that.
Them and the ones who run on holidays.
And the ones that wake up in the morning and already have all the kids' lunch packed and breakfast made, and you're like, just slow down.
I struggle in that area.
Slow down, you're killing me.
Yeah. But she's proven to be a very huge part of our organization now, because she's working on her second case now, and
actually her third.
Her third case, and the children just seem to gravitate toward her. And then I have a volunteer who's a stay-at-home mom, and she has a little more time to put a lot of effort into some of these cases, and she's been able to take on some of our more difficult cases.
I am a 38-year-old man, and I still remember mom tone.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so once you said children gravitate, she has the tone.
She does.
It's the tone. You remember mom?
She's got the look too.
She's fiery.
I love her. She's perfect.
She's everything.
I think speaking, I believe I told this story last time you ladies were here. Again, we apologize, folks, for not being able to release that last time. The last time you guys were here, we specifically mentioned male volunteers, and one of the stories that I told, and this is definitely true, is that often, I have 3 sons and a daughter, and my oldest son is my best friend, one of my best friends, and we'll go on car rides, and I think it's just a guy thing. We'll go on car rides, and I won't say nothing to him the whole ride, and he won't speak to me the whole ride, and every now and then I'll just reach over and pat his head, and we just know there's just male to male bonding and volunteer time. I absolutely advocate for, if any males want to volunteer, absolutely, because there does need to be that a young boy does need a male role model.
And we do have a lot of young boys in our cases now. I think I have 4.
Yeah, I've got 3 myself
right now. And the thing is yes, it's easier sometimes for little girls to talk to women. But it can be intimidating for a young boy to tell a grown woman, this is what happened to me. This is how I feel. Because, like she said earlier, we haven't really experienced the things that you all have growing up. And I think having a male volunteer to tell those kids, it wasn't your fault. this is how we can make it a little better, it just gives them that extra that they may need.
One of the greatest scenes in movie history was here. I don't know if you ladies have ever watched Good Will Hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I can't remember it.
Okay, well, Robin Williams to, I think it's Matt Damon.
Mm-hmm.
Robin Williams to Matt Damon, where he just looks at him and says nothing but, "It's not your fault."
Yeah.
And he says it like 5 times. And by the end of this, they're both crying and hugging. And that's all he says.
And sometimes
It's
that's
not your
all it
fault.
takes.
And it's just a male to a male looking at him. It's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the, I got chills on the back of my neck thinking about it. This is one of the greatest scenes in movie history. And it is true.
And one thing I've noticed with the young males in our case is a lot of time they hold a lot more guilt. Because they're like, I should have protected sister. I should have been able to do this. And in all actuality, honey, you're still a child. And nothing was your fault. And there was nothing you could have changed or done. And they just need a male to tell them that sometimes.
All right, so ladies, what I want to do is, if we can get back into the spirit of it, but I want to discuss a little bit more about, because we've already touched on the fact that you're looking for male volunteers. We've touched on age range. We've touched on socioeconomic status. What is it in the Eastern Kentucky, specifically here in the Magoffin County area, that we're looking for in particular? You mentioned we don't have volunteers at all here right now.
So honestly, any volunteers at all would make me very happy in this area, because I'm ready to jump in here head first.
Okay.
So any age, as long as you're 21 or older, I'm willing to train, and we'll take you on.
And the other thing is, if you can't volunteer, maybe this seems like too much for you, but you're still wanting to help. We're always looking for board members to help represent this area. We currently don't have anyone that represents Magoffin County, so having a board member to kind of give a voice to the county as a whole would be, always appreciated. And then the other side is, again, if you can't volunteer, maybe you also can't be a board member. You can also, donate. We're always looking for donations. We are a nonprofit, so we run on grants, fundraising activities, and then, individuals that want to give as well. And again, all that can be found on our website. And there's always more information. You can always reach out as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask. You mentioned grants, fundraising activities, stuff like that. In Magoffin County, we have in Rolton, we have what they call Trader Days, which is once a month. They set up and do booths to sell products and stuff like that. And I think nonprofits can set up there as well. And then we also have our small community events. So it's nothing like Patesville's Apple Day, but we have Founders Day. Has CASA got any plans? Do they do anything like set up and try to bring attention to the organization and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we do a couple different festivals throughout the year. We try to do at least one activity in each of our counties. We do have something called a recruitment plan, and that's where we kind of list all the known activities in the counties that we serve. I do know that Founders Day is listed on our recruitment plan. So we plan to hopefully be a part of that in the coming year. But yeah, that's typically what we do, is we try to find different things that are going on in the community to be a part of it, because that's the best way to get the word out, right? Is showing up. Again, going back to showing up. It's a theme here. But yeah, that's the priority, is trying to get the word out and go into these activities and just saying, hey, we're here and we need you.
And if anybody watching this actually has any idea of places we could set up or times, then let us know. Reach out, message our Facebook, let us know that, hey, Magoffin County has this going on right now, because that'd be a lot of help to me, who I'm not very familiar with Magoffin County, but I do know that I'm very willing to learn.
I recommend following Appalachia Insight.
I do already.
And the other thing is like, it's not just like community events either. We also go to like the Rotary clubs. Yep. We go to local churches that want us to come and speak. We'll come and speak to your organization. You just got to reach out.
Also, I recommend. I'm a member of the Masonic Lodge. The Masonic Lodge here in Magoffin County is actually kind of legendary. Awesome. They do coats for kids. They do fundraisers. They do lots of stuff. People from all over the country have come to the Magoffin County Masonic Lodge. I do recommend getting in touch with them. As far as Appalachia Insider goes, I want to go ahead and make this as a public announcement. We do free advertising for all nonprofits. So if you guys do like a monthly newsletter or anything like that, and you would like it to be put out, let us know. We'd be happy to help with that. Okay. I want to go ahead, and since my friend Terry is not here, and he always likes to touch on this subject when he is available. Has CASA got any affiliations or any ties with any religious organizations?
Not necessarily, no. we're not associated with one religion or another. We're an organization that we will talk to anybody and everybody. The children that we serve, again, we encourage our volunteers to go into the situation, leaving their biases at the door. Mm-hmm. We as an organization are the exact same way. We're not going to judge you one way or the other. You come to us, you have questions, we're going to answer them, and we'll be present on your ground, kind of thing. But we're not affiliated with anything specific.
Any and all religions, if you're just willing to come out and help these kids, maybe that child is someone who is a part of your religion and kind of needs that little extra, then that's great too.
Well, the reason in particular that I bring it up is that Goffin County being a small town in Appalachia, and you ladies are probably familiar with this, a lot of the outreach done in areas like this is often handled by local religious groups, local churches and stuff like that. So does CASA have any kind of adverse reaction to working with local religious groups or anything like that?
No. A lot of our volunteers, I myself, are religious. Our other coordinator is also, and a lot of our volunteers have worked with their churches to help our children. So there's not any sort of adversity towards it. No,
because we're currently working with one of the largest churches in Pike County, mm-hmm. and they let us come in and speak to their congregation, and mm-hmm. we've actually got an upcoming volunteer from one of those interactions with them, and it's been wonderful. Mm-hmm. So we would absolutely love to get into more churches or any place that may have people that want to help these kids.
One of the upcoming guests for our podcast, and we haven't actually nailed down a date yet, is Pastor Larry Patrick of the Lakefront Church. I don't know if you're familiar with Lakefront Church here in McGoffin.
I'm not.
Lakefront Church is actually connected to. Have you heard of God's Pantry?
I have.
Okay, Lakefront Church is connected with God's Pantry. They run a food pantry called the Water in the Wine Food Pantry. It has a lot of volunteers. They feed hundreds of people every month. So I definitely recommend, if you're wanting to expand out and branch out into this community area, reaching out to organizations like that.
Most definitely.
Yeah. That's kind of where we found a lot of our volunteers, to be honest, is out of churches. Mm-hmm. Most of all of our volunteers are religious in some form. And yeah, a lot of them are super supportive and great.
All right, ladies, I'm going to put you both on the spot one more time. I want to go ahead and just give me kind of a summary of what you want people to know about the CASA organization, or about yourself, or about anything in particular. I mean, just give me. But I'll let either one of you that wants to go first. Just give me kind of a summary of what you'd like people to know.
So I think the main thing that I want people to understand about CASA is that we are there to team up with DCDS in the courthouse. That we want volunteers who are dedicated and who have that big heart to help these kids, because children in this area can't be left behind. They just can't. And our main goal is to make sure that doesn't happen.
I think that's an excellent point. A lot of times, as Eastern Kentuckian people realize, is we get forgotten, and we don't want that to continue to happen. We certainly don't want that to happen with our children. And so I think the main thing that I hope that you all will get from this is there is a need, and even if it's just a little bit of your time, you can make a world of a difference and really help change a child's story and how their whole life might come out to be. And so I really hope that you consider being a volunteer. And again, if you can't, consider being a board member, or just considering helping donate, because we want to keep spreading our mission, and we really want to get active in all of our areas. And we just appreciate your support.
We're also working on Friends of CASA, so people that can't be on the board, or people who can't volunteer, but they would like to come out and help us with a fundraiser, kind of see what it's all about, get out into their community. We look for people to do that too. So message us and tell us you'd like to be a Friends of CASA if that's something you want to do.
Really quick before we wrap up, I have one question and one statement. So question is, you mentioned board members. Could you go into a little bit more detail about what's required of that and what you're looking for?
Yeah, of course. So again, our board members, everyone has to be at least 21 or older, pass a background check. Our board meets quarterly, so there's at least 4 meetings a year. They're all on Zoom because we are such a large service area. It's really hard to meet in person. And at these board meetings, you guys discuss policies, how we can better our program. We do have individual committees within the board. So like we have a fundraising committee, and their whole thing is, how do we do fundraisers? What's a great way to get money? So the board really kind of helps develop those policies, helps, recruit new board members, helps recruit volunteers. And they kind of help guide me in my day-to-day and what I can and can't do. And so our board is really the head of our organization. I'm just the neck, and everyone is the body. So, we got to have a board. So.
And then finally, the statement. We here at Appalachian Insider, Terry and I started this with John for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is one of the things that we wanted to discuss and encourage in McGoffin County and in Eastern Kentucky in general is economic development, political discussion, and community outreach. Mm-hmm. So we're very thankful to ladies like you for coming out and having a conversation with us, because honestly, I actually wrote a paper about this. I think I might release it at some point. One of the things that I wrote this paper about was the fact that doing kindness for others is selfish. And let me explain. When you do a kindness for others, you develop a community environment. So not only are you going to be working with, I assume, the children that you're talking about and helping, but you're also developing a community connection with the other CASA volunteers. Mm-hmm. And then at the exact same time, you get that good feeling you get for doing a kindness. So be selfish and do a kindness for somebody else. Get that good feeling.
It is one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, to be completely honest.
And it makes you feel, that's my point, is that you're kind of doing it for yourself because it makes you feel great.
Even on some of my very worst days, I can look through my case file and be like, you know what? I've really made a difference. I'm all right.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling.
It's a great, so that's, okay, like I said, the kind of premise of the paper is that really when you boil it all down, you feel good. People feel good for helping others. So we want to thank you, both of you ladies, for coming out and speaking with us. Once again, we want to send our very best wishes to my good friend Terry B. Sire. And I believe that's going to be everything for us this evening, everyone. Have a good night, and God bless.
Thank you.